Welcome to Sprinkle with Hope podcast with your host Jason, and we are so excited to have Michael with us. He has an amazing backstory, and I really want him to open this up and kind of give his his background a little bit and tell a little bit about himself because I think it'll be better coming from him today. So thanks, Michael, for coming on with us. We really appreciate you coming on our show.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here with you guys. So I'll give you the elevator pitch here. When I was 4 years old, my mother, who was a drug addict and alcoholic, she actually cut off my right index finger. And
Wow.
my stepfather, who was super abusive, he would torture my brothers and I. And I spent the majority of my childhood homeless and in poverty. And in fact, by the time I was 10 years old, I lived with 30 different families. I got high
Wow.
for the first time when I was 12, drunk at 13, and by 15 was expelled from school. I was out selling drugs, breaking into houses, stealing cars, and hurting people. And luckily, I got put into a last chance program. Still did not graduate high school on time. They basically just handed me the diploma. They're like, "You got to get the hell out of here, man." And I found myself here heading into my late teens, thinking about, well, what's the solution for poverty? How did I get in this? What is going on? And I was like, oh, it's got to be money, right? Money must be the reason all these bad things happen to me. And so I started chasing money, and I set a goal. I want to make $100,000 a year by the time that I'm 21. Well, by the time that I was 21, I landed a job with a Fortune 10 company, no high school diploma, no college degree, and I started doing exactly that. But that thing that happens when people get money, that people say happens when you get money, happened to
Right.
me. And my life turned into a disaster. And I found myself at 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, drinking myself to sleep. And that's when I put a gun in my mouth.
Mm.
I was just done. I was like, I thought money was supposed to fix this.
Yeah.
It didn't. And it turns out what actually fixes it's like doing the work. And I sat there and I looked at my life one day. I woke up as 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm laying in bed, smoking a joint, eating chocolate cake, and watching the CrossFit games. Like, if that's not rock bottom, like, I don't know what is. And I went and I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, and I was just thinking about the journey of my life, right? My 3 childhood best friends had been murdered. My uncle's in prison for life. I come from a place where people don't get out, and I was wasting the opportunity. And I asked myself, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And the words "no excuses, just results" just started reverberating in me. And there's like, that was this amazing catalyst for everything that was next in my life. And I started this journey of getting serious about healing, going to therapy, group therapy, MDR, EMDR, CBT, Gestalt therapy, getting into personal development, having a coach, going to the seminars, reading the books, doing the things, getting trained by people who are in this space who are unbelievably incredible, and looking at my life now 11 years from that moment of looking in the mirror and now being a leader in this space. And it all just came because I stopped negotiating with myself. Now, I
Mm.
never anticipated like these kind of conversations. This isn't what I planned my life to be.
Mhm.
It just happened to become that because of the work that I was doing.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff to unpack there. I mean, that I could sense the pain and all that stuff that you have gone through, but yet you've come out of that and now you're helping others. So was that moment while you were sitting there, what you just talked to, was that the moment that you decided to change your life, or was there something specific other than that you decided to change your life?
Yeah, I think I decided to change my life every single day since I was 12 years old. You know what I mean? Like, we all
Yeah.
Hmm.
have that. We're all in this, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And we never do it. And that to me was, man, that was rock bottom, Shane. Like, it doesn't get any lower than that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I was just like, if I don't do something now, I'm going to die. Like, I just knew it. I could feel it in my soul. I was like, man, game over is right around the corner. You
Hmm.
better do something. Again, I'm 350 pounds. I'm drinking myself to sleep. I'm stoned from the moment I wake up till the moment I go to bed. I'm chasing money. I'm putting myself in some incredibly precarious situations, right? And I was just done. I was fed up with myself. I was just tired of my own bullshit, man.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like, I think people have to understand about this journey that hit me really hard. I used to lay in bed at night and be like, who's going to come and save me? Who's going to rescue me? and ain't nobody coming. Like it's not happening. There's no Disney moment. Nobody's coming to swing down through the bat cave and get you. You're gonna have to go and make your life. And it's really unfortunate to me that we live in a place where people feel they're owed something, because that was me too for a long time. I'm owed this. Somebody needs to come and fix this problem. And as much as I wish I didn't have to say it, that's just not how the world works. And so that moment really just became the last straw. I was just over myself. I was just tired of looking at my life and going, you know what? This is your fault. Now, look, that's not culpability for the bad things that happened to us. It's not on you if your parents were terrible parents, if you were hurt, if you were abused, if you were molested, all the things that happened to me. But from this moment forward, you're an adult, you're 24, 36, 52, 71 years old. At some point, you're going to have to do something about it. And that was just the point for me. I was like, you have to do something.
Yeah, I love that, because I think those things that happen to us, they don't have to define us, right? Like they don't have to be our identity. Those things happen to us, and yeah, they were bad things, and we just have to learn to move through those things and carry them sometimes on our backs and feel the weight until we can shed those things off of us. So is there kind of some ways and tools that you've used to help yourself kind of move through that scenario, those hard situations?
Yeah, all of the things, right? I think we live in such a fascinating time when it comes to access of information.
Mm-hmm.
This journey honestly really got deep for me when I started listening to podcasts and reading books. Now, this was early on. Like nobody was listening to a podcast 10 years ago. There was
No,
only a
not
handful
really.
of them, right? There was only a
Yeah.
handful, but I was self-employed. I was running my own business at the time, and I would just sit home and listen to podcasts. And I started hearing all these people saying the same thing. I was like, oh man, there must be something to this. And then I got serious about going and getting into the books, into the education, into the information. And then I took therapy seriously for my first time ever. I would go to therapy as a kid because of the thing. It was like court mandated, right? They were like, oh, this kid's going to blow up a house or something. We got to put him in therapy.
Right.
And so I would always go. And even in my 20s, I was still going while all this chaos was happening. But I learned how to lie to my therapist, right? I just told them what I thought they wanted to hear, because then that meant like I'd be safe, right?
Right.
And so I had to step into tremendous, tremendous vulnerability. And I think that's the thing that people have to hold on to here. If you're willing to go into the depths of your soul in a vulnerable place, in a place that's safe, like, I mean, don't do it at the cashier at Kroger, but like,
Right.
you go and you do that with someone who's a proctor to help you guide you through these moments, man, it's life changing, and I think it's, therapy is kind of like dating. You got to find the right person. I went through a lot of therapists before I found the right person. Right. And ultimately, I think it's just about showing up. And inherently, there's something that tells me we know exactly what we're supposed to be doing as individuals, but there's that place of ignoring yourself. It's woeful bliss, right? You're like, tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that works until it doesn't. And so when you're in this and you're like, where do I really start? Which I think is probably more pointed to your question. It really starts with acknowledging that you're in this place in your life because now you've probably made some decisions that led you here, right?
Yeah.
Going to the bar all the time, eating fast food all the time, not going to therapy, cheating on your partner, calling in sick to work to play video games, eating gummy bears for lunch, right? These things, they all stack up, they all add up. And we sit here and we go, it's everyone else's fault. And I wish it was your fault, Jason. It'd be so much easier, man. I'd be like, dude,
it really
Jason's
would.
fault. It's Jason's fault. He's got to come fix this. But that's just not how it works. And so acknowledgement, again, it's not culpability. It's just simply looking at your life and going, okay, I got to do something here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we all have to decide at some point, we own the life that we live. We might have things that happen to us, but we ultimately own our life. So all of these things, what's going on in Michael's life now? What are you working on? What are some cool things that you're doing now?
Yeah, it's always kind of just an evolution of looking at my life in 37 years from now and asking myself this question: am I doing everything possible to end generational trauma in my lifetime? And so every single day is predicated on moving towards that. So what does that mean? Well, today it means be on 7 podcasts and work on book number 3 and finish getting the launch page for my new coaching program done. And then do all the other things like go to the gym and eat well and try not to drink too much coffee. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I measure everything in my life. I measure everything in my life against my goals. And I look at my goals and I write them down every day. And I say, what does it take to make that happen? I want to end generational trauma in my lifetime. It's impossible. It's impractical. It's far-fetched. It's unfeasible. But that's not going to stop me.
Right.
Right. No, I totally agree with you. And so there is some goals out there that, you know, might be unreachable, but if you never try to reach for it, you're never going to reach it anyway. So, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, you going after those goals that seem like they're impossible, impractical, all of those things. And there's going to be some doubters out there that are going to say, well, why even bother? And so I'm with you, brother. I think, you know, shooting big and shooting for the stars is the way to do it. And that's the only way we can get better.
Yeah. And I think you have to write down like this pen. Like I wish people understood the power of this thing, like in a real practical sense. Man, I've written down stuff that doesn't happen for 7 years. I just hit a goal the other day. It happened 7 years in the making.
Wow. That's awesome.
You're trying to do things. See, people, I love Gary Vaynerchuk. He says this all the time. He's like, people are focused on what they can do in 5 minutes. I'm focused on what I can do in 50 years. Right. And so I'm thinking about the long-term game and, you know, removing instant gratification from the equation and trying to be incredibly patient, because here's what's really fascinating. When you start to accumulate a lot of these really big goals, I've done amazing things. I've spoken in front of 10,000 people. I've had investments from billionaires into my business. I've coached people off the ledge. Like I've had these amazing moments in my life. And then every time on the backside of them, I kind of go, okay, that was amazing. I'm so glad that just happened. But what do I do now? Because the high of the achievement, I feel like has never matched like the thrill of the journey. Mm-hmm. And so I was sitting one day and I was like, wait a second, I'm undershooting my capability here. I'm not playing fair with myself. I'm limiting myself. It's incredible to me how many people are limiting their potential, limiting the ability that they have to do things that are so incredibly great that people will look back on your life and go, how did they do that? And it all starts with the things that you're thinking. All of it starts with what's in your head. You know, I tell people all the time, this is the first thing I teach all my clients. You take this pen, because it is the most empowering tool in your life, and you write down, I am the kind of person that is kind to myself. Right? Because when you start filtering the choices and the decisions that you make in your life through, I am the kind of person who is kind to myself, you start to ask yourself, if a kind person was measuring themselves against themselves in the narrative of you versus you towards their goals that are so incredibly big, right, while also simultaneously stepping into a growth mindset, then that means when they hit these walls, which they assuredly will, because we all do, you won't beat yourself up. Instead, you'll just say, I don't have the skills to be good enough yet. Right. That word yet, I'm lucky. One of my mentors is Tom Bilyeu. And I don't know if you guys know Tom, but he's an incredible human being. And Tom taught me this word yet a few years ago. And it changed my life forever, because I realized even then I was like limiting myself. You're not good enough yet. Doesn't mean you can't get there, but to reach these massive goals in your life, you're going to have to attain incredible skills. Like that's just the way it works.
Yeah. Michael, I love that. And I love that what you're talking about, the I am kind to myself, those type of things. I just love that. I think it's really sound advice. I think anyone can use that. And I could see, you know, I haven't thought about the pen as a powerful thing like you've talked about, but I can see that, you know, we can write down anything and go after that as long as we decide that we were really going to go after it. So how can our listeners get a hold of you if they'd like to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm everywhere. I'm not that hard to find, but I'll say this: the best thing to do is to check out Think Unbroken podcast, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to bring on amazing people who have amazing stories and who have done amazing things, who have real tools that you can use in a practical way. And then I'm also going to give you everything that I know about all of this, and I'm going to put it into a place where it's consumable. And, you know, I tell people all the time, you would literally never have to buy my book, read a program, join a course, come to an event. You don't have to do anything. You listen to that podcast and you pay attention, you take notes, it will change your life. So it's Think Unbroken Podcast, or you go to like thinkunbrokenpodcast.com. And we release shows multiple times a week.
Awesome.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I just love, you know, kind of your story and how you've come from a place that, you know, was full of hate and anger and abuse and all of these things. And, you know, you've been able to accomplish great things in your life. And so hats off, you know, and a pat on the back to you for, you know, getting out of that cycle of abuse. Because unfortunately, and you probably know this better than anyone, typically when it's abuse like that, it goes on for generation after generation. And so hats off to you for stopping that, you know, at least where you're at, and not continuing that cycle forward. So thank you for sharing your story. Shane and I, we love to talk about hope. And so you know, towards the end of our podcast, we typically like to end with what we call the double down dose. And so it's I'll ask a question and then Shane will have a follow up to that. And then we'll have maybe a few other questions and then wrap up for today. But what is your definition of hope, or how would you define hope?
Yeah, you know, I think it's everything, right? Because you look at life, you look at society, you look at the fact that we live in arguably the most negative time in the history of the world, right? Media is negative. Go show me something positive on the news in the last 2 years. I dare you. You can't find it. You know what I mean? Go
Yeah.
show me something positive in people's social media feeds that's not just about look how great my life is. It's not there, right? And so filtering through all of the chaos of that is incredibly difficult, right? People start putting themselves down. They beat themselves up. They go, I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable enough. They measure themselves against other people instead of against themselves, because this is truly a you versus you narrative. And when you leverage a word, a feeling, an emotion, a practical tool like hope, it's everything, because it's about measuring the possibility of what you can do in your life, right? It's something to hold on to. It's something to ground you. Like I recognize I'm going to die, right? It's going to happen. I know
Right.
it's going to happen. But instilling the hope and the belief of like, okay, cool. If I just move forward, then by the exponential property of humanity on a long enough timeline, I will be able to reach my goals. I'll be able to have the life I want to have. I'll create the impact I want to create. And every day I just go, cool, let me just leverage my belief. Because to me, hope is about believing. Like it really is. I think there's maybe a misnomer around it where people go, hope is about this idea of just simply if I put it in the universe, it'll happen. Well, I hope it's going to happen. Yeah, but I believe it will. And that feels more practical
Mm.
to me. Right. And so maybe my definition is a little bit skewed to what most people interpret it as, but it's everything. You know, I'd lay in bed at night as a little kid and I'd be like, man, I hope somebody comes. I hope my real dad shows up. I hope our water doesn't get turned off again. I hope the electric bill gets paid. So when it's freezing in Indiana, I'm not freezing as a child sleeping. Hope that happens. Right. And then you're
Yeah.
faced with this really weird reality that hope doesn't come to fruition, but belief does.
Mm.
Yeah. I really appreciated your insight. I think I've loved this discussion. So we came up with an acronym of HOPE. HOPE stands for heart, overcome, passion, and enough. So when you hear the word passion, what do you think about when you hear that word?
Yeah. You know, I actually think about repetitiveness, right? People, you know, I chase my passions. I love speaking on stages. I love writing books. I love interacting with people. My passion really lies in those things, right? Nothing brings me more joy, but guess what? The only way you get good at those things, the only way you can leverage your passions to create life around them is through tedious, repetitive work. Sitting here, you know, it's really funny, man. I spoke in front of 10,000 people back in April. 6 years ago, I was speaking in front of 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody saw 4 people, 8 people, 7 people, 35 people register and 4 show up. You know what I mean? Nobody saw all those.
Yeah.
Writing, I've got thousands of blogs that nobody's ever read. Thousands, but I have a #1 best-selling book, right?
Yeah.
Hundreds of podcast episodes nobody's listened to, but I have a top-rated podcast, right? The thing is, like, that thing about passion, like, people really like to me, I'm like, let's tag on and parlay patience with that, please.
Mhm.
Because like the reality is it's going to take you longer than you ever will imagine to create what you want against your passions. Be passionate. Be willing to show up. Be willing to do the tedious work again and again and again and again. Because if you're serious about the thing that you're passionate about, you're going to be willing to suffer through it. Because sometimes it's like, for real, sometimes like sitting there rewriting. I rewrote a book 3 times.
Yeah.
Literally deleted it. There's no original copies of the first 2 drafts of my book because I wasn't satisfied. And then I wrote it again. I trot, like, it was such an incredibly painful journey to read it and get to the end and go, that's not good enough, Michael. Do better.
Yeah.
Delete. Right.
Yeah.
And so passion is super important, but what are you willing to do to have it?
Yeah, I love that. You know, I've been looking at the book, you know, in your background, the 10X rule, and I've read that book. It's a great book. How would you kind of talk about maybe 10Xing your life? You know, summing it up in just a quick brief, you know, because I've read that book. It's amazing. I think everybody should read it, but how would you say 10Xing your life or yours specific? How do you do that?
I love Grant. I'm lucky enough. He's one of my mentors. He's the
That's
one who
awesome.
invested in my business. Like, there's not a lot of people on planet Earth who said they got money from Grant Cardone. So
No.
let me say that first and foremost.
It's
You know
true.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so, no, man, like, Grant's an incredible human being. If you look past him knowing how to leverage the media, he's one of the most intelligent people in the self-development movement of maybe ever. He might be the Napoleon Hill of our generation that people
Totally.
just are not seeing it.
Yeah.
You know, being in the presence of that man, his team, I go to Miami all the time. I was just there 2 weeks ago, like being in his office, watching the environment, seeing people have this level of belief that is so gigantic. It's scary sometimes. And so to me, this idea, this mentality about 10X, it's about looking at your life and going, I can do better. I don't have to settle. Good enough doesn't have to be good enough. And that if I'm willing to work and I put myself around the right people and I learn the right tools and skills and I go out there and I put myself out there, which is the most uncomfortable thing on planet Earth,
Totally.
then I can create what I want to have in my life. And that doesn't necessarily mean you got to be a millionaire. Like, who cares? Money, like, whatever. Money will come and go. But can you be okay with who you are, living your life to a level that you've never imagined because you have hope, right?
Mm.
Michael, I have really loved this discussion. I appreciate your insight and that you've been willing enough to share your tough moments and also your rewarding moments. So really glad we had you on, brother. I'm very thankful for your time and your insight, and best wishes to you and everything that you're doing upcoming.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I mean, this is wonderful. I appreciate you guys so much. You know, you're being here. You're a part of my mission of ending generational trauma. So I have gratitude for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And I think it does go back. You kind of talked about that vulnerability. And so thank you for being vulnerable. I think that there is a lot to be said when we are vulnerable, you know, and put ourselves out there and, you know, aren't fearful of what might come of it and just moving forward and showing that passion. Right. That was a great explanation of passion. I loved it. So thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate you coming on with us today and thank you for your time. I know it's valuable. So thank you again, brother.
Thank you, my friends. I appreciate you.